Systems and Management Part 2. In the last presentation, we began to discuss computing. We talked about cloud computing. I'm going to continue this discussion looking at server computing. So we talked about servers. There are specialized computers that basically serve the client or the other computer's computing requests. They have basic components that, when we're looking at server computers, that are found in client or desktop computers. Those servers are designed with multiple high-speed CPUs, large amounts of RAM or random access memory. They are inserted or racked in computer cabinets that allow for high density. They don't require individual directly connected monitors or keyboards, mice, or other devices that are common with your client or desktop computer. You have keyboard, video, and mouse over IP devices. They are centralized systems that give your administrators keyboard, monitor, and mouse access over the network, and it eliminates them having an additional cost for providing those peripheral devices for each server. You have what we call blade server technology. It increases server density and reduces server costs. It's stored in a compact enclosure, which they call a blade chassis. It has reduced size, uses less energy, boasts higher availability. All right. Virtualization, that's another technology. It significantly reduces the amount of server infrastructure that is needed to support the organization's environment. That's where that consolidation initiative, you start thinking about that, consolidation of your data center. That virtualization feature takes advantage of a server's unused processing power by creating multiple virtual server instances. It creates multiple virtual server instances. So that increases that server density. A hypervisor or virtual machine monitor, VMM, that's a computer software, firmware, hardware that creates and runs virtual machines. So these virtual server instances, called virtual machines, run on servers. They run Windows, Linux, and those types of things on the operating system. Servers that run one or more VMs are called hypervisors, and they're defined as host machines. Individual VMs are called guest machines. So they combine or cluster multiple host computers into redundant and highly available server farms so that your VM can automatically move between physical hosts. Server virtualization significantly reduces server downtime due to hardware failure or planned maintenance, which is always good. You can classify servers in additional ways. Servers that are fully supported and managed by a vendor, we call those appliances. They're typically self-contained, require only a network connection, and they're easy and fast to deploy. And they can be your preferred method for delivering a server application. You can also classify servers as production, development, or test types, with all three of these being stored in a secure, highly available data center. You have infrastructure servers, so they are responsible for your core services that support server system functionality and that need to be implemented properly if your organization wants to rely on their business and clinical applications. You have a dynamic host configuration protocol, DHCP servers. They assign unique addresses to each of your computers on your network. You have your domain name system server, DNS server, Enables users and servers to contact websites and other servers by maintaining a directory listing of server and website names. You have an Active Directory server, AD server, that maintains lists of users, computers, and printers, along with any associated passwords and security settings. You have an Identity and Access Management server, IAM, that automates and streamlines the management of user, computer, and application accounts and passwords. And their use significantly reduces your number of help desk tickets. You also have infrastructure servers like your enterprise monitoring servers. They monitor servers, application storage, and network services. You got system management servers. They provide comprehensive management of applications, services, physical resources, hypervisors, and networks. They also provide centralized services to your centralized services such as desktop imaging, antivirus protection, and those types of things. You got database servers that maintain your organization's databases. And we also already mentioned before your Enterprise Web Content Management Servers, EWCM. So it provides easy updatability and management of your web-based content. You also have application virtualization servers that enable users to run applications that are installed in a central location, which eliminates them having to install the application locally. Client computing, when we think about client, those are like your computers and devices used by your end users, and they can be either stationary or mobile. We have what we call your AIO computers, your all-in-one. You got wall-mounted computers. You have thin and zero client computers. You have electronic tracking board systems. Your AIOs are often used in your clinical areas that have space constraints. Like in your operating room or your emergency room, and they have all the computer system components except for your keyboard and mouse integrated within their monitor. You got wall-mounted computers. You frequently see them in your patient rooms or other locations where they have space constraints. Your thin client computers, you are increasingly seeing them being used. They're small. They rely on the server for all their data processing. They have a small amount of random access memory. They have a very small or reduced size CPU, a very small hard drive that runs like a modified version of Windows. Your zero client computers, they're similar to your thin client computers, but they have an additional advantage of not having a local hard drive or operating system to secure or maintain. Your electronic tracking board systems, they support real-time tracking of critical information that's pertinent to the flow of care for your individual patients. You'll often see them in your ERs. Your mobile computers, that will include your WOWs or your COWs, computer on wheels, stations that they use around in the hospital, your laptop tables and your tablets and your smartphones will be your mobile computers. Your WOWs are often used in your clinical areas like your nursing station, your patient rooms. They roll those in. They have specialized medical grade keyboards and mice with them. And sometimes your organization may let you use laptops and medical grade tablets with docking stations. Your tablets are going to be easier to carry than your laptop, but they're not as well suited for when you're documenting, and we all can testify to that. It's easier to type in on your laptop than your tablets. Smartphones, used primarily for your communication-related activities, like your email and scheduling, those types of things. your other client devices and peripherals, barcode scanners, signature pads, printers, your ID badge access control systems. You know, your barcode scanner, you often use that with your on your the wristbands of your patients, medication administration type situations that using in pharmacy using barcode labels. Your records a lot of times, or some of your records will have those electronic scan things as well. Signature pads, when they want electronic signatures from your clinicians and stuff, they can use those. Your printing and your electronic document management, your EDM. You have centralized print servers that can be deployed in your organization's data center and can support as many as 500 printers. Your electronic document management system comes into play when you're scanning those paper documents into the system, especially trying to go maybe into an electronic environment. Your optical character recognition technology that converts the image into editable text. You got your different scanners, portable scanners at different speeds. Then you got your we talked about your badge and access control systems. That's like your ID badge, maybe these radio frequency identification, RFID badge readers, badge printers and cameras, badge access control hardware and software, smart ID badges, all those things they can use by clinicians or by employees when they're dispensing medications or anything of that nature, using those wild cards. You got virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI technology. Basically, your client's desktop operating system is hosted within a VM or a virtual machine running on a centralized server in the data center. All right. With your you can have your PCs be repurposed with a VDI desktop, and when they are maybe going to be decommissioned, and you can continue to use those for several additional years. You also may see organizations deploy VDI software to mobile devices, giving them the ability to operate their local desktop or a VDI desktop. VDI desktops are generally used as a standard desktop image that has all the applications and programs pre-installed, and so that a person's personal user settings can be maintained centrally. And so with these VDI desktops, they can either be persistent or non-persistent desktops. And what the difference between those two is that when that user logs on, every time a user logs on, if she has a persistent desktop, then they receive a new desktop installation every time with their login. And so basically, if that desktop freezes or crashes, all they do is log off and then log back in, and it will create a new or fresh desktop. This does not occur if they're using a non-persistent desktop. So this going to function much like a non-VDI experience, except that your dedicated server storage is not recreated or refreshed when the person logs in. Now, your single sign-on technology, this allows users to only have to remember one username and password for their desktop session and all their applications, regardless of how many applications are on the desktop. They just sign in using that one username and password, and it allows them, it automatically logs them into all the other applications without requiring them to have to enter again. Your tap and go technology is when the employee can just use their ID badge and log on to the computer by just tapping on a specific area, and it allows them to gain access. Your session, when you use with this technology, it can be transferred seamlessly based on the proximity of your ID badge to a working station and bring it over to that next computer exactly as it was left in the previous computer. So this is like very good in a very busy healthcare environment. So they just tap their badge on it and they can transfer from one desktop to another depending on the proximity. Mobile computing, think about your mobile technology. Basically, in a healthcare arena, we have lagged behind other industries for a long time in terms of mobile computing, but now we see significant opportunities in which this mobile computing can improve our delivery of care. It improves real-time delivery of care with the rapid adoption of these smartphones, these tablets, and all these types of mobile technologies. That BYOD, bring your own device phenomenon, also is included under your mobile computing. And we have to, as professionals, especially in this HIS environment, healthcare managers have to understand how an effective mobile computing strategy can be developed. So they have to consider these steps in developing a mobile computing strategy. They want to first of all identify the key stakeholders who have unique mobile computing requirements, like the end user, your clinicians, management, and your IT staff. So you want to identify those stakeholders, and then two, you want to create policies and procedures and an end user acceptance agreement, detailing out terms and conditions for mobile computing expectations. And then thirdly, you want to understand your regulatory, legal, and compliance requirements that you're working within when you're developing this mobile computing strategy. It has to include all your pertinent local, state, and federal regulatory, privacy, security, legal, and compliance requirements. And fourth, you need to develop mobile management strategies. And fifth, define the technical architecture. And in terms of your technical architecture, there are four important technical areas that need to be considered as part of your mobile computing strategy. One will be what the mobile platform is going to be, whether the enterprise directory integration will be needed, which devices and native applications will be supported, and which telecommunications management capabilities and restrictions will be applied. Now, information security is very important. We have to ensure and maintain the security of HIS data and applications and that the supporting technical infrastructure if we want to have long-term viability. So we need to have appropriate security programs, policies, and corresponding controls in place to define how users and computer systems should behave, and as well as to protect valuable assets that we have. Security should be considered at the outset when we're designing and implementing a HIS. It needs to be incorporated in all aspects of technology. The security needs to be reviewed and adjusted on an ongoing basis to properly protect our evolving technology environment. Now, there are many information security related systems and technologies that we can deploy in order to do just that. Firewalls is one. Firewalls are network devices that limit access and protect an organization's internal network from unauthorized users and external systems. All right. You also have your virtual private network that allow your remote users to connect to applications or services that are accessible only from computers on the internal or corporate network. Your VPN connections, they are secure and encrypted remote access sessions. All right. So all of the data that travels between that remote computer and the internal network, they are secure and encrypted. Now, intrusion detection systems, IDSs, and intrusion prevention systems, IPSs. They are intelligent monitoring and analysis systems that detect irregular or inappropriate data traffic occurring on your corporate network. So the organization can use those. You have web security systems that are designed to monitor your end-user internet activity, block out or greatly reduce a user's ability to access inappropriate websites or things that are considered to be unauthorized. There are DLP capabilities, data loss prevention capabilities, that are designed to restrict confidential or unauthorized data from leaving the internal network. Encryption in transit, and you got encryption at rest. With encryption in transit, it ensures the security of all the data traffic containing confidential or electronic protected health information, like email messages, text messages, instant messaging, and those types of things. And your encryption at rest is a similar security control. It protects data stored in databases, applications, storage and backup systems, laptops, and mobile devices. It's interesting to note that one of the most cited reasons for organizations being fined by HIPAA for violations is loss of stolen laptops. There's also organizations can also deploy what we call two-factor authentication to provide secure access to remote systems as well as to critical services or network devices. They can require employees to have two forms of identification. The most common form of single-factor authentication is your username and password, and that will fall under your category of something a user knows. So your two-factor authentication, they'll commonly include your username and password plus something a user has, such as like a smart card or a personal identification number. It can also include something a user is, which will fall in like biometric devices like retinal scans or fingerprint readers or the like. Security Information Event Management, SIEM. It's designed to automate and intelligently analyze system logs for anomalies and inappropriate activity. System hardening, vulnerability assessment, and penetration testings are three ongoing security activities that ensure that the network, servers, applications, database systems are configured in a highly secure manner. They have all their security patches. They're free from vulnerability that can be exploited, and they will impact the organization. Let's talk a little bit about managing your HIS and your technology. So you have all these, you have to manage these to ensure that the technology areas are acceptable and ready to support HIS implementation. It's common for your organization to complete what we call a technology assessment or gap analysis well before they implement their HIS. So we're looking for areas that maybe need improvement or need to be addressed or remediated. A key indicator that your HIS program is being effective is the amount of unplanned work needed to mitigate major system crashes or other adverse events that may occur and cause that system to be unstable or unreliable. An effective HIS initiative will have minimal system issues. And it's not just about installing hardware or software. if the HIS is achieved all of its intended purposes, the organization also needs to look at the people who are managing the HIS and the HIS organization processes from 3 vantage points: from an operational perspective, from a project view, and in light of how the technology and other IT services are delivered. And we talked about the IT department being in sort of a silo for many years, where they just purely fill a technical role. However, at this point in the game, they now need to establish a collaborative, partnering type working relationship with other business and clinical staff. This is going to be key to the long-term success. So people and processes are going to be very important in managing your HIS implementation. To achieve successful implementation, a well-defined process is going to be required. Information technology governance is a term that is used to define this requirement. It comprises the processes that ensure effective and efficient use of IT and enabling an organization to achieve its goals. ITDG, IT demand governance, evaluates, selects, prioritizes, and funds HIS investments, including overseeing the implementation and tangibly measuring benefits that are achieved from their IT implementation. So with the IT demand governance, it is looking at what IT should be working on. With IT supply side governance, ITSG, it's looking at who in IT should be doing what, all right? Operating in an efficient and organized fashion. So trying to implement governance without a formal and structured framework is not a good thing to do. It can cause failure. There are several ITG frameworks that exist today. You got Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology, COBIT, and frameworks developed by your International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC. And we're going to look at your Information Technology Infrastructure Library. It is the most widely adopted framework. It describes an integrated set of 7 process-oriented best practices for managing IT services. It's well suited for organizations that have a chief information officer. Your ITIL provides high-level how-to guidance for the many processes and flow diagrams and descriptions. So the 2 primary best practices we're looking at is your IT service support and your IT service delivery under this Information Technology Infrastructure Library. With your IT service support, it's a very important area. It encompasses your support processes that you need to ensure acceptable service. It's more process-oriented than technical, and it accomplishes its goals by managing problems and changes in your IT infrastructure. Your IT service support is seen more clearly when your organization quickly solves issues encountered by staff. When using HIS, train staff on how to best use the software, or when they manage requests for modifications, upgrades in a non-impactful way. Alright. So with your IT service support, it includes the following elements. Your service desk, which is that single point of contact for users to report incidents, and for managing requests from any other types of purchases or services. And usually they'll say, they'll call it like a ticket. We have those, like, create a help ticket, help desk ticket. Also on the IT service report will be your support will be your incident management. That handles your trouble calls or system-related incidents that are brought to resolution. You got your problem management, which is your recurring incidents that are analyzed for root causes and providing permanent solutions. You have your change management also on your IT service support. Usually you have a formal process that describes your HIS modifications or updates and how that's going to be done. You have a corporate manager that's going to authorize those requests and approve those. You have also on your IT service support, you have release management, where major new releases of an application or operating system software are implemented. And usually have some type of methodology required to do that. You have your configuration management, where by which the computing environment is documented in a configuration management database usually. Your CMDB or your configuration management database is usually a resource for them to resolve issues and maintain inventory. Now your second best practice would be your IT service delivery. So this is going to, in this area, you define your services, you describe roles and responsibilities of those who pay for services, those who use the services, those who provide the services, and it defines the service quality, availability, and timeliness expectations. So the following elements are included in your IT service delivery. That would be your service level management, where we negotiate those service level agreements with our end users. We track for performance, adherence, or compliance. For example, you have an agreement with your end user on HIS outages, and you can categorize them between whether they high, medium, or low, based on how much time it takes for those to be settled. Availability management, ensuring that your HIS infrastructure supports your services that you need to be available. So you might do frequent auditing and system checks. For example, your IT will make sure that the data does not outgrow the availability of your hard drive space. So they want to make sure that doesn't happen and your system shuts down. So that will be part of availability management. Capacity management ensures that the HIS infrastructure has the processing capacity needed for the business functions at hand. All right. Financial management. Process of accounting for the complex nature of HIS services and understanding cost in terms of unit of service. This is another aspect of your IT service delivery. And finally, service continuity management. That deals with them identifying what those critical applications are for the organization, and some type of alternative for providing those services in the event of a major service interruption. So kind of hand in hand with that is disaster recovery and business continuity planning. Okay. Financial management is very important. It's a very important area to be considered, especially with all the challenges that faces the healthcare environment today, especially in dealing with costs. So this is also important when we're dealing with HIS implementation initiatives. And in addition, HIS costs from EHR implementation, as well as the cost to support your EHR on an ongoing basis, does put tremendous financial pressure on a healthcare organization. IT operating expenses as a percentage of your total of an organization's total operating expense has been known to be significantly higher for organizations who are just beginning to implement an electronic health record. So it's very critically important that we do some type of financial management when we're looking to implement these technologies. Another area in which unexpected costs may arise in HIS and EHR implementation is related to project duration. If your project is taking longer than expected, then more cost is usually associated with that increased duration. So we have to pay attention to that. In addition, the cost to maintain operations are high due to things like training requirements and those type of things, and productivity dips when you implement a new technology. A key indicator of effective IT is the ratio of unplanned work to planned work. We had kind of mentioned that before. A lot of times when you see too much of unplanned work, there's usually not a very good impact on your budget. To address financial and budget risk, your HIS management needs to be knowledgeable in budget and planning, purchasing options, operating expenses, basic accounting principles and standards, financial models and methods, and compliance regulations. In terms of vendor management, it's important to be able to manage your vendors in alignment with the many initiatives that you decide to undertake. Because most of the time, your organization does not have sufficient resources to invest in large and ongoing system projects, and so what they do is focus on developing their core competency and then leaving the majority of their HIS development and deployment to vendors and consultants. And they're going to work in concert with those members in the organization to develop these systems and the new workflow processes that's going to be a fit for your organization. But in order to do that, we need to have a very good customer-vendor relationship. This is going to be critical to the success of your HIS initiative. It needs to be a collaborative, formal, and mutually agreeable relationship that's going to benefit both of your parties. An organization has to establish a truly strategic vendor relationship. They don't want to have too many vendors delivering different HIS products and services, because this can become inefficient. It can become costly and overly complicated. You also don't want to create a silo of systems, and we already talked about that. That kind of puts burdens on that system. A healthcare organization should follow 4 steps to select the right vendor. Number 1, they want to formally submit a project request, and this is going to involve them submitting that project request, and they create creating an initial project and business plan that's going to involve all your needed parties. Now, after they formally submit a project request, they want to analyze their business requirements, like looking at the system scope, feature and functions, technical requirements, and so forth, and then they will create what we call a request for proposal, RFP, that they send to the appropriate vendors. Now, 3, they want to conduct a 3-layer HIS vendor evaluation search. In that first layer, which is your functional layer, that deals with features and functions, your upgrade path, your ease of training, your workflow that's going to be supported, usability, features and functions, test scenarios, and all those things will be under your functional layer. The technical layer will include your technical architecture and your specifications for your network and your databases, and your infrastructure needs to be considered in this layer. And then in your 3rd layer, which will be your business relationship and contract layer, your company characteristics, survivability, contracting guidelines, adherence, business relationships, trust, integrity, commitment to the project, and all those things should be considered. And then finally, in your 4th step, you're going to select that candidate that and successfully negotiate that contract. And you would like to end up with 2 vendors, narrow down your candidate to 2 vendors in order to select the final one. This allows them to kind of compete for your interest, and they tend to do a better job. All right, contract management. One of your key factors in successful vendor management is your contract management. Your contract management in the context of HIS can be explained as the execution and monitoring of a contract to maximize financial and operational HIS performance and minimize HIS risk. Contract management, it brings a number of benefits to your organization and to your vendors. For one, you're going to standardize your processes and procedures, right? So that's going to decrease your uncontrolled spending and things of that nature. It provides expenditure visibility. You'll have improved compliance management, enhanced spending and performance analysis, and we just mentioned reduced uncontrolled spending. You need to understand contract management guidelines because that's going to provide a framework for accountability by both the organization as well as the vendors, and there will be a successful collaboration or engagement between both parties. In your contract, you want to have contract milestones, which are key areas that both parties are going to carefully review and agree upon to make sure that the contract is a success. Change of control is useful to manage all your changes that occur in your HIS implementation. You got maintenance costs that you need to make sure you pay attention to as well in a contract. Project management is important. It plays a major supporting role in your HIS implementation. It's critical that your organization has a viable and robust project management methodology in place. And when we talk about project management, we're looking at that as a planning, organizing, securing, managing, leading, and controlling resources to achieve a specific goal. There are 5 project management phases per your Project Management Institute, PMI. You have some, depending on who you read, they may have a different number of phases, but they most, in general, follow something similar to this. But with this, there are 5 project management phases. You have 1, your initiating phase. And in your initiating phase, the project leadership identifies their stakeholders. They develop a charter. They do a preliminary project scope statement. They obtain approval of their project charter from the appropriate governing bodies. In the second phase, that's your planning phase. You're going to plan that project scope, quality and risk management, and your project schedule. You're going to have a work breakdown structure. Quality and risk management plan is going to involve them identifying and analyzing any risks that may be associated with your project and with a planned risk response. You want to define and sequence your activities, estimate how much resources and how long it's going to take, and plan for your commitment of human resources to this project. And then in your third phase, which is your executing phase, directing and managing that execution, acquiring, developing, and managing project teams, performing quality assurance, problem solving, procuring project resources. You're executing those things you plan. And then in the fourth phase, you got your monitoring and controlling. With this phase, this is where you're going to manage that change control process. You're going to control your quality, control changes in cost, schedule, and scope. Based on the plan you've outlaid, you're going to make sure it falls in these parameters. You're going to measure performance. You're making sure whatever you plan is following that plan. And then the fifth phase is your closing phase. This phase involves performing project closure and contract closure. You have done what you set out to do, and we have completed this project. Now, basically, you had those 5 phases that we just identified, but there are what we call 10 knowledge management areas, and they include all your aspects of your project management that are required for your successful completion of that project on time, on schedule, with the best output. These areas of activity are going to complement the 5 phases of project management that we just discussed, and they can occur during more than one of these phases. For example, your project scope management, which is a knowledge area, and its primary purpose is to ensure that all the required work is performed to complete the project successfully. All right. Then you got project time management, develop and control the project schedule. You got project cost management, complete the project within the approved budget. Project human resource management, obtaining, developing, and managing the project team who will perform the project work. Project procure management, you're going to manage the acquisition of products and services from outside the project team that's needed to complete the project. Project risk management, identify potential risks and respond to them. All right. Then you have project quality management, ensuring that the project satisfies its objectives and requirements. Project integration management, manage the integration of the various project activities, ensuring that project information is distributed and generated promptly. Project stakeholder management defines all stakeholder activity that occurs within a project. So all of these work across your different project management phases that we discussed, and these are considered knowledge areas. All right, that assists us in completing those phases. Now, integral to project management, you have the project manager. And the project manager has many different responsibilities, including working with the project team and others who are involved in the project in order to make sure those goals are met, delivering specific project objectives within budget and on schedule. The project manager controls project resources so they have the most efficient and effective use and to best meet those project objectives. They manage the project scope, schedule, and the cost. They report on the project progress. They facilitate and resolve issues and conflicts and risks that may prove detrimental to the project. So a project manager is very, very, very important. Compliance management. Compliance management deals with us being in compliance to the different laws, rules, and regulations put forth that impact the way we do things. In terms of HIT implementation, we have the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA of 2003, as well as the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health, HITECH Act of 2009, which are very significant federal laws that regulate how healthcare organizations are going to manage the protected health information and the electronic protected health information of their patients. In that, these health information systems store and manipulate and manage this information, then these regulations and initiatives are going to affect the way that we do things, and we need to be in compliance with them. Your healthcare organization can be covered entities, which means they are going to be compliant to HIPAA. We are very interested in making sure that we don't experience breaches in that information where someone acquires or accesses or uses information that is disclosed inappropriately. And according to some of these regulations, we are required to provide notification following a breach of unsecured protected health information. And so when we meet those satisfy some of those different requirements for that, then we must do that. We must remain in compliance. In addition to protecting privacy and security of PHI, HIPAA prevents healthcare fraud and abuse, simplifies billing and other transactions. So they do create standard transactions on how we transmit information for billing purposes. You also have to be aware of what is protected health information and what they are. It's defined as information that meets the following criteria. It relates to the past, present, or future physical or mental condition of an individual and provisions of health care to an individual, or for payment of care provided to an individual. Is transmitted or maintained in any form, electronic, paper, or verbal, and identifies or can be used to identify an individual. All right? So your individual identified health information will be like your patient's name, address, name of employer, telephone number, social security number, and all those types of things. Right? And so HIPAA is protecting that information. So as an employee of a healthcare organization and you're interacting with that PHI, you have to make sure that you are in complete compliance with those guidelines. So confidentiality, you got to kind of work in between confidentiality, integrity, availability. All these have to be balanced. Healthcare organizations, they can take a number of practical steps to ensure that confidentiality, integrity, and integrity and availability of their electronic PHI. One safeguard they can deploy is implementing access controls. So your user ID will determine what you have access to, and user access should be limited to the minimum information needed that person needs to do their job. And they should never share this or their ID or use another person's ID. When an employee is terminated, their access should be immediately removed. Second safeguard will be password protection, not shared with others. And it should be changed on a periodic basis, and you shouldn't write it down but commit it to memory. A third safeguard will be your workstation security. Physical security measures need to be put in place for your workstation, including your electronic computing devices, your laptop, your desktop, or any other device in which electronic media is stored. We also talked about protecting those things, including disaster controls, surge protectors, physical access controls like your screensavers, your locks, device and media controls, will be like your backup, and then you got malware controls that protects your software and your information on your workstation from viruses, worms, spyware, trojans, and suspicious email. Viruses, they spread themselves out through your different workstations and servers, and they proliferate. And so we can use, the organization can use what we call antivirus software to prevent that from happening. You got worms, they're similar to viruses, and they can spread without the user doing anything, and they just kind of take advantage of the security weaknesses in a system, but they can prevent the spread of those by making sure organizations can prevent that spread by making sure they keep all their security updates installed. You got spyware. It monitors their users' computer usage habits, and they report it back to an external computer and use it maybe to store in a marketing database. It's installed without the person using it knowing that that program is being installed. So what ends up happening, it opens up advertising windows, it slows your computer performance, and they can be prevented by installing and running updated spyware scanners. Then you got your Trojans. They are also malicious software which allows remote users to connect to that client computer without permission of that user and take over, assume control, take screenshots, access programs. And you got antivirus software programs that can detect and remove Trojans as well. Phishing emails, they are email sent. They have links, web links that seem like they are legitimate, but then when you click on it, it sends you to a malicious website, and they get all your personal information and details, and you can compromise your personal information that way. So basically, with your malware, you have a lot of dangerous programs, and so your workstation computers and the data has to be properly protected against these types of situations. So we talked about some of the measures, using the firewalls, using your endpoint protection software like your antivirus software, making sure to install computer software updates timely, encrypting and password protection, automated log-off features, password protected screensavers, keeping your computing equipment locked up in secure locations, not storing your sensitive information on portal devices, backup of your critical data and software programs, disposing of old unneeded hard drives correctly, using encryption, reporting any suspicious activity. All of these things will help to properly protect your work computer station and your HIS data, which is very important. Now, finally, managing of people is very important. The increased adoption of your technology and the expanded role of your IT means they're going to come in contact with the different people whom these services and capabilities impact. Your senior managers are also important, are essential for the success of HIS initiatives. They, in fact, have to be champions of this. And additionally, you got IT-related leadership roles that have come about to assist in the successful implementation of HIS and other technologies. Now you see larger IT departments that have internal full-time employees. A lot of times you can see the IT functionality really outsourced to other vendors and organizations, and now you see a growing IT department due to all this technology that comes in. And so to meet the evolving technology demands of healthcare organizations, especially in light of the increased usage of your EHRs, you got many clinical, business, and project-related roles that now require HIS knowledge and expertise. You got your Office of National Coordinator that has developed programs designed to educate and train potential HIS workers, because they need those who know how to assume those roles that will help the healthcare providers to transition to EHR. And I actually did take a course on this. The first one there they're talking about is the Practice Workflow Information Management Redesign Specialist, and that's the one I have taken advantage of. They assist in reorganizing the work of a provider to take full advantage of features of health IT to improve health and care. You got your implementation manager, you got implementation support specialist, clinician, practitioner, consultant, technical software support, and your trainers. All of these roles are important as providers transition from paper to electronic health records. Also, staff development is very important. It's a key component so that they can attain competency in this type of environment. They can have staff improvement programs that gives proficiencies and qualifications needed to those employees. They can provide employee development through training and in-service programs, certification classes through the community college or university, conferences, workshops, professional associations, type deals. All these things could be sources for staff development. Steering committees, when it comes to moving HIS initiatives forward, bringing closure to projects, selecting systems, addressing ongoing system needs, then your steering committee is going to be an essential tool for that. Your steering committee is basically an advisory committee. It's usually made up of your high-level stakeholders and experts who are going to provide guidance on key issues like your company policy, budgetary controls, marketing strategy, and so forth. This is usually a best practice approach for organizations to have a steering committee. So executives, department heads, and all those are involved in that. One thing that is important is maybe to select another name for the committee besides IT steering committee or something of that nature. Maybe finding a name that's going to reflect that organization's work culture and the committee's specific purpose. You need 3 essential steps if we're going to form an effective HIS steering committee. You're going to build a case for the need for HIS steering by aligning your strategic business and HIS priorities. You need to establish a steering committee charter that outlines key tasks and responsibilities, important roles and responsibilities. And then 3, you're going to keep the HIS steering committee small and meet at least on a monthly basis. Now, that we did all that because we want to get to implementation. The implementation of a system is very hard work. We know, I just talked about ARA, which is your American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, in which the HITECH Act is a part of that, of 2009, that provided stimulus funding for incentives for your physicians and hospitals to implement the electronic health records. And at this point, they basically look at your EHR systems as either being a basic EHR system or a comprehensive EHR system. With a basic EHR system, it uses is a system that uses EHR functionality on at least one clinical unit and includes patient demographics, physician notes, nursing assessment, patient problem list, laboratory and radiology reports, diagnostic testing results, as well as computerized ordering for medications. That's a basic EHR system. Now, a comprehensive EHR system is going to include all your basic functionality that I just described, but then it also is going to include 14 other clinical functionalities, and it's going to be used throughout the entire hospital based on not just one clinical unit. And your comprehensive EHR adoption requires each function to be implemented in all clinical units. Basically, with your HITECH Act, or actually I didn't mention the more advanced functionalities is going to include your computer provided order entry, your CPOE, your electronic generation of quality measures, patient electronic access, and those types of things. And what I was going to say is your HITECH Act is requires that these functionalities be implemented in stages, and we talked about this in our last week. We call those meaningful use, your stages 1, 2, and 3. Those are those functionalities there. So you got a basic EHR system, a comprehensive EHR system, and it's interesting to note that only 44% of hospitals use a basic versus a comprehensive EHR system, And this is what we were looking at before your High-Tech Act stimulus. Well, no, that's after your High-Tech Act, stimulus, because if we look back at the percentage of hospitals using basic or comprehensive EHRs in 2008, we were only at 8.7%. And then in 2009, we were at 11.9%. And so at this point right now, we're at 44% hospitals using the basic. So that's still progress. Even though it's not the best, it's still progress. Additionally, your physician office EHR adoption rates have also increased substantially with that stimulus program. We have 40% of all your practices now using basic functionality of your EHR system. Your participation in your health information exchanges has also been increasing, with 30% of your hospitals and 10% of your ambulatory practices now active in one of 119 health information exchanges in the United States. But the reality is more than 70% of those are struggling because of not having an effective or sustainable business model. And so they're trying to work some of those kinks out. Now, Now your implementation, there are actually several progressive steps leading to that go live or that implementation moment. And basically, your first step would be that of implementation planning. That means including your system selection, the elements of contract negotiation, system specification and documentation of the setting in which the system will be implemented. Your system design includes creation of your computer functionality that accomplishes your redesigned workflow and processes in a user-friendly way. In step 3, system or application programming. That's your technical aspects of like your system engineering, the computer programs that need to be written that reflect that system design. And then 4, you're going to develop or build. That's the creation of your applications, your interfaces, your interaction between those applications, so that the overall system is going to perform according to your design. Then you're going to test it. That's in step 5, system and integration testing, weeding out and correcting any errors. Then 6, you're going to roll out or deploy that system. Go live system activation. 7 is your evaluation step, measurement of your system functions against your performance and user satisfaction metrics. This progression of steps is continually repeated. Once a system is in use, then you have an iterative process of continually making your improvements, fixing issues, add new functionalities or capabilities to the existing platform, add new users, new reports, upgrading your system, and so forth. And so your implementation is more general. That's a general description of the process, and it's going to be in use for any healthcare organization. It's going to be similar whether you're doing an enterprise system or standalone, whether it's deployed in a hospital or a physician office and so forth. It's pretty much it's going to be pretty consistent. It's only going to be the content, your scope, your technology, and your participants that's going to change are vary based on the type of system you're implementing. You can elaborate a little more on your steps in implementation. That's what you see on your right-hand side, where you start with a kickoff and project planning, creating the project planning team and task forces, and then 2 will be your system selection, and selecting what they're going to implement. using a process. Then 3 will be your contract negotiations, or the negotiate agreements for all your necessary system components and services. You want to design your system in concert with your process redesign, like looking at your interface, including your interfaces and those types of things. Your development, you want to develop the system and build it, including the creation of your system files, all your organization specifics, like your numbering systems and those types of things. And then 6, you're going to test for each model and connections, making sure all those are working. 7, you're going to train your IT staff and your project participants while that system is being developed and built, and then train your end users closer to the go live time. Then 8, you have deployment. You prepare the system site, go live, and roll out that system for production in a production environment. And 9, you want to evaluate. You want to test and validate that system after you go live. Make sure everything is working the way we desire, and take those results of that evaluation and issues identified back in an organized process to work and resolve those. So all this activity is going to take place after your HIS and technology plan has been created, discussed, and approved. Once that HIS plan is in place, then the initial projects that get the plan launched need to be defined in detail, approved in the form of business plans, and then initiated. A rolling list of strategic initiatives can be used for the purpose of that. It's useful. And also communicating is also necessary to keep the organization up to date about what's going on with the HIS plan. Most of the time, it takes years for an organization to implement an HIS strategic plan. A good approach to that will be breaking that big effort into recognizable, executable portions, create stages, and then each stage contains phases that's further broken down into several strategic initiatives and key steps. So when we look at it in terms of like stage 1 with the planning, you can break those down into phases. Phase 1 would begin with the foundational infrastructure, including the data center and other computing environments and the medical internet. And also it will include in phase 1 a thorough analysis and documentation of your current state, how those key processes are currently being performed before designing a new workflow. So your current state, remember, is the beginning of your migration path, or that roadmap we talked about. Another key component of phase 1 would be the development of your master patient index. Then with your phase 1, it's going to consist, or is most likely going to consist of your network infrastructure project. So that's going to be that foundation we talked about, of that electronic highway. So all your any other systems can be implemented on part of that network infrastructure highway. And we talked about the current systems review and the current state and that migration path to your future state. Once the HIS plan phase 1 projects are identified, each of your projects needs to be defined in the form of your business plan, approved and initiated. All right. Your network infrastructure implementation project. So you might have that project team, and you might divide that project team up into subgroups that handle different aspects of that. And then also in stage 1, which is your planning, that's your phase 1. Your phase 2 would include your systems and technology that are going to be more advanced and require the base systems and infrastructure to be in place. So therefore your kickoff for your EH project will occur in phase 2. when an EHR project kicks off, it must include a multidisciplinary team with representation from your IT, your other clinical departments, and any other users who would be involved. Some of your key points that you need to remember is that your development is going to begin where you are. So you must begin wherever you are. You can't start at any other point. You only can start from where you are currently. Another thing that's also important is that you need to think everything through, write the entire plan down and discuss it, break it down into component parts, make it on a spot, make a budget, projection. You need to think this out. It should be thought through from the beginning to the end before you launch into your first project effort. You want to break all your strategic initiatives into recognizable, organizable projects. So you want to put it in chunks and pieces that are a lot more doable than just trying to attack the whole thing. Don't underestimate your importance of training. Training is going to be very important for everyone involved. You need to find the right balance between that and your investment into training and education and all those other things that are needed for the project. So invest in training and development so that everyone can win. Make sure you carefully identify and document your current state, processes, and workflows for all key processes. Look at your SWOT analysis and your interviews. Your SWOT analysis is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats tool that you use to look at how that affects your organization. And your interviews are going to look at those users and the way that their work processes are actually going. Do not choose a software vendor or deliver a system without a full current state and SWOT analysis. That's what we just got through talking about. Those are important so that you know what you're looking for in a system. The current state documentation should reveal the topography or layout of the new system. The physical layout of your workflows is going to be a key element of what is discovered during your current state when you do analysis of your current state. So it puts the light on all your nooks and crannies of the organization's physical layout into which that system is going to extend. You have to be careful when if you're going to use software systems like quote unquote are out of the box. You got to, no matter how full of bells and whistles they have, they need to remember that system has not yet been shaped to conform to what an organization to a specific organization's characteristics and desired workflow for key processes. So it will be a mistake to allow a vendor to design a workflow for an organization and they don't have any idea of what's actually needed from that organization. The system ownership needs to reside within the organization and not with the vendor. Your new system should be implemented in a basic way first, and then you add advanced functionality after everyone has some experience with the basics. Take the opportunity to standardize the computing and data environment. You're going to standardize your computing and data environment. So this way you can find those gaps, and those gaps are going to represent opportunities to fine-tune your operational environment. And you can get many efficiency and effectiveness value gains from doing that. So it's very important for both quality and cost reasons. Every project that's part of your HIS plan implementation must be initiated and approved through a formal governance structure, a formal process. Make sure that proper communication takes place. Now, stage 2 will be our HIS system selection. They're your Health Information Management System Society, HIMSS. They have published methodologies for this process. You also have consulting firms that have a methodology for a system selection process. These steps are generalizable to various types of HIS projects in healthcare settings. They can be used by any organization. Basically, you want your system selection process to follow on an agreed upon methodology and done in a consistent way. So this will create familiarity with that process. The software selection process follows a series of essential steps. And I have those outlined here on the right-hand side for stage 2 HIS system selection. So in step 1, you want to develop the HIS project plan and communicate it to the organization. So you should have a detailed project plan with a timetable and work plan, and use that tool for informing everyone about what's going on. Establish the selection committee. The selection committee should consist of your experts in software and systems, and along with your SMEs or your subject matter experts. That'd be like your business analysts and things and those are in those functional areas for which we're selecting that new system. For example, maybe you're doing a system for your human resources and your payroll. So then your subject matter experts will be those people who work in payroll and human resources and finance and those types of areas. Define the system requirements. This involves documentation of all your system requirements and forms, which is going to be the basis of the evaluation process. And these requirements are going to fall into 3 categories: your software features and functions, your technology requirements, and your business relationship requirements. And so these areas, they have to be discussed with the selection committee and others throughout your organization, as well as those vendors who are going to be competing for your business. Your education process is going to have to explain how each category selection criteria is going to be equally important. And when we talk about selection criteria, usability, technology, and business relationships. And number 4, develop selection criteria. These are going to be your specific requirements within each category that reflect what that's what's going to be important to your organization selection process. Again, usability, technology, and business relationships. Your selection criteria should spell out what exactly is important in each of those categories. What is most important to our organization? So this is what we're going to base our selection on. Number 5, you're going to identify potential vendors. Potential vendors must be considered as candidates during your software selection process. So you might identify a full list of potential vendors through industry connections, research, and all those types of things. In step 6, develop a request for information, including the desired rules of engagement, and send it to potential vendors, including the desired rules of engagement. So your RFI, that's your request for information. It is going to concisely describe your healthcare organization, what your system requirements are, the timing that's required, the scope, and your expectations. You're going to send this to those that list of possible software vendors that you have compiled. And with this list, it's going to be narrowed down through that request for information evaluation process. So that process is intended to gather information about each of your vendors and make an initial assessment without spending too many resources. And so you're going to use that to narrow your field down to maybe 7 or so vendors who you're going to in turn send what we call a request for proposal and they'll have the opportunity to propose their system. So a request for proposal, that's your step 7. You're going to develop that, and it's going to include contracting guidelines, and you're going to send it to that 7 or so vendors that you narrowed down. Your request for proposal is a more thorough document that's going to outline in great specificity your requirements for your system from your usability, technology, and contractual standpoint. The proposal from the vendor in response to your request for proposal represents a greater commitment than the more cursory response that you had with your request for information or your RFI. So then we're going to take that request for proposal and dig into those details. We're going to make sure those vendors are held to their representation in their response to their request for proposal. The RFP responses are attached to the agreement with the vendor as part of the contractual obligation. And then both parties will sign on the dotted line, which represents commitment. In step 8, we're going to evaluate the RFP responses, narrow the field of vendors, hold scripted demonstrations, and conduct site visits. So this is a very exhaustive process where they're going to compare those 7 to 10 vendors that we chose. They're going to compare them one to one another based on those RFP responses. And then so that 7 to 10 vendors that respond to that RFP are going to be narrowed down to 2 or 3 finalists. These are going to be the only vendors that are going to proceed to your next step. The other vendors will be sent a letter notifying them that they have been eliminated from this process. Then step 9, you're going to conduct detailed and due diligence on your finalist vendors. So in this step, your project team is going to conduct detailed due diligence on each final in the categories of usability, technology, and business relationships. All right. And number 10, you're going to negotiate an agreement. Initiate contract negotiations with the top 2 vendors. And you're going to see how that proceeds. You do not want to negotiate with a single vendor. That would be a mistake. You should always have 2 viable vendors emerge from your first 9 steps of the system selection process, and your favorite will emerge from those 2. And so when that first choice knows that there's another competitor, they'll do a little more, and it gives you the organization a greater leverage with the vendors. Send your contractual guidelines to the finalist vendors as part of their finalist packet information. Include in those guidelines is your negotiation of the agreement with that vendor that forces both parties to discuss the responsibilities for implementation, and then they sign on the dotted line, legally commit them to perform those responsibilities. An organization does not want to sign a standard agreement from a software vendor because it's going to commit their organization to paying for the entire system. Instead, what they want to do is to create an agreement that's based on a milestone payment structure, and basically what that essentially is saying is your payment for that vendor is going to be based on a passage of time in which the health organization is going to pay for, say, 50% of that system when they sign the contract. Maybe the remainder will be due within 1 year that date. And your payment is based on accomplishments of those milestones that were agreed upon that's going to lead to that successful implementation. If an organization does not feel comfortable in doing these negotiations, they can find a lawyer or a consultant that's qualified in doing HIS contract negotiations. So all this is in step 10 where we're negotiating the agreement. In 11, we're going to finalize the project plan and budget based on the negotiated prices, cost estimate spreadsheet, and specifics of the implementation plan. Once that project plan is complete, it should be clearly and thoroughly communicated through the organization so that all of those different departments can plan accordingly. And also, during those go-live stages, no other major activities should be attempted in the organization. And then finally, in step 12, we launch the project, including the organizational communication plan. So the system selection and planning phase is complete, and it's time to launch the project. All right, some important things to look at in terms of technology project successes and failures, and some of them we kind of already mentioned. We got to remember that these are multifaceted projects, and they require very careful, smart, strategic, and tactical planning. So they have to be carefully thought out, well documented, effectively communicated in terms of strategic HIS planning. Right, including the sequence and timing of projects, sub-projects, and work tasks within the project. Think through and plan for building all the interfaces to and from other systems that will feed or will receive data from the new one. Watch out for silos. We talked about that several times in this presentation. Those do not work well for that interoperability factor. We want to have synchronization between other projects and implement and other projects that may go on. So it is best to plan for system projects together so that they fit together properly. Also remember that these projects require motivated, qualified IT personnel and interdisciplinary subject matter experts. You want to encourage people in your organization to retain a clear picture of the entire HIS architecture on the organizational vision, not just departmentalized. If a IT staff sort of becomes stressed because of long hours and all the exhaustive work, it may be a good practice for them to take a break, go to the patient care areas, talk to some of the caregivers who are going to use their system, and this will help reground them, as well as those individuals that they spoke to can gain and respect for the depth and intricacy of the work that's being done by the HIT professionals. Good contracts are keys to success. We just talked about that. Solid, well-negotiated agreements that holds your vendors accountable to the milestones that they agreed upon, and as well as clarify responsibilities. And that's going to be worth every minute invested into the creation of your contract. Following your contract guidelines is going to be paramount when you're negotiating with your vendors. Some things you look at: percentage of the vendor's company's resources devoted to research and development for the project under consideration, how the company is going to respond to issues that develop over the course of the project, conformance with HIS contracting guidelines, vendor organization stability and longevity, how they deal with change of control, what's the vendor's reputation. The implementation plan, it should be detailed, making sure you identify major milestones so that it serves as a threshold for portions of payment to the vendor. Training plan, make sure you have that included, because you know there is budgeting that is important with your training plan. Support services. The norm for support and maintenance fees is 20% to 30% of the license fees. So no organization shouldn't make a mistake of spending all their energy on negotiating the license fee and ignore your maintenance fees. Nothing's more important than the responsibilities negotiating with the vendor for system support and maintenance. Milestone and payment schedules. We talked about that over and over again. Always define your performance milestones in your contract. Product lifecycle support. Negotiate an agreement that includes, as part of your software license, new releases and versions of the software for at least 10 to 15 years. Include all your updates and upgrades in your license and support fees. Scope of license. Include all applications and modules that the vendor offers in one site license. Even if you have, if as an organization you don't have any plans right now to implement those modules. You got to remember that your leverage is not going to be, will never be greater than it is before you sign that agreement. So that's where you need to implement all those things. Promises made during your sales cycle must be written down and defined in exact specificity, attached and committed to in writing as part of your agreement. An example of a key milestone type payment schedule approach, you may include like contract signing, they get 10%, hardware installation, software installation, 10%, project plan development and staff training and orientation to the new system, 10%, systems design and build, including modules, applications, and reports that constitute the total system as outlined in the RFP and requirements definition, 15%, and so forth. So you lay out those milestones and what percentage of payment that they get according to when those milestones are accomplished. If that vendor is not going to agree to the milestone-based terms in your negotiation, then you might need to shift your discussion to your second acceptable vendor. Document system performance metrics. Hardware specifications and system performance metrics are essential components to your project plan, contract, milestone-driven project. It should be detailed out and used as a key portion of the system's test milestones and criteria. Now, what vendors sometimes will try to do is to underbid their other competitors in the RFP proposal process and skimp on expensive hardware with greater capacity. So you have to make them commit in a contract to what they are saying that they're going to do. And this will make sure that their configurations are realistic given the size and volumes associated with your organization's system. You also, as an organization, don't want to gouge your capacity based on your current size and volume, but you want to take into consideration requirements and peak volumes that you're going to project into the future at least 5 years, and making sure that that system will be able to handle that capacity. Additional things you want to look at is data ownership. That organization owns all its own data, and that vendor cannot use that data to which it has access for some other purpose unless approved. We already talked about change of control. Well, no, we didn't talk about it in terms of, so you have a contract with this vendor, and the vendor is sold or merges with, becomes subsumed with another company. That needs to be laid out on some kind of change of control provision. Interface requirements. All systems require data from other systems, and all systems send data to other systems, and so they need interfaces or integrations. So it's important to define those interfaces and place a list of this in contracts. Regulatory compliance, whatever that vendor is, solutions they are giving you, they need to make sure that they're complying with all federal and applicable state laws and regulations. What's your upgrade path expectations? So we need to address certain key upgrades and enhancements that have been presented in that sales cycle, and it should be outlined and committed to by that contract in the contract with the vendor. Cooperation with other vendors is important. That new system vendor will have to work and cooperate with other vendors to construct those interfaces for the different systems, because they're going to be sharing data. So your vendor must be able to work collaboratively with other vendors. Fund projects with adequate resources to succeed. So we need to have a properly resourced project in order for that to succeed. And so it has to be carefully planned at a very detailed level, and realistic cost estimates must be based on those details. And we already mentioned this as we're doing the actual implementation. We need to freeze or minimize our other priorities. We have to have a strong project management We have to devote time and effort to getting the organization's culture ready for this change. We have to have interdisciplinary coordination for transforming this implementation, and we have to have cooperation. It's also essential to the integration. All right. Your HIS management is also important, and they can make or break HIS and technology implementation. Our final concept is on leadership, because with HIS and technology adoption, your leadership is very important, and it involves more than just one type of role, or one type of healthcare venue, or one method of management, or anything of that nature. Effective HIS leadership is going to require not only expertise in their own arena, but also understanding of the various HIS layers and relationships between them. Now, when we're looking at the leadership from an organizational perspective, you got your Chief Information Officer, which is a typical lead role. And in organizations, you may see them called Chief Information Officer, or it may have some other name, maybe depending on the size of the organization that's equivalent to that. It might be like your IT director or something. They usually have someone, but Chief Information Officer is what we're going to call it here. And part of what their function is to create a strong and synergistic relationship with the Chief Executive Officer and other clinical and business stakeholders in terms of our HIS strategies and plans. The CIO will end up being a member of the senior team. I call it the executive suite. They will be in participation in organization strategic business discussions and decisions, as well as operational and tactical activities. We talked about that HIS because it's going to touch all your critical functions in your organization. So they need to be, the CIO needs to be at that table. Your CEO, they're responsible for guiding the seeing the organization from a comprehensive perspective, and your HIS is going to be essential to that overreaching organizational perspective. So your CIO should report to your CEO. All right. So with your Chief Information Officer, HIS strategic planning, department management, staffing and sourcing, budgeting, project service delivery are all under his purview. They have to engage others in that organization in dialogue and discussion so that they can establish those HIS principles and standards in the organization. They are overall responsible for guiding HIS and technology systematically in the direction that the organization has established or desired to go, and making sure they advise their CEOs and others who are supporting the organization what they can expect from HIS to accomplish the goals and objectives outlined. You have a Chief Medical Information Officer. They fully engage the physicians and the nurses in their respective peers to those physicians, so the physicians can hear the purpose and rationale and all those things behind the projects that are going on from a respective peer. The person who fills this role is usually a physician, and so it's a physician leadership role, and they will become a member of the HIS department, and they typically call them a Chief Medical Informatics Officer, and usually that physician already has some affinity for the informatics field. So they typically are going to report to that Chief Information Officer, but they also may continue on maybe a part-time basis practicing medicine, which is probably a good idea because it keeps them in touch with those needs on that end. So your Chief Medical Information Officer is going to be a key player in the presentation of new ideas and HIS initiatives to those clinicians. All right, you have your Chief Nursing Officer that's over your nursing area, and you can have some of those go also into your nursing informatics, your and they will report to your chief executive officers, your department managers, manage your departments and key functions within your healthcare organization. They're going to be vital to the successful definition and accomplishments of your HIS plan, because the departments for which these managers are responsible, they exist for a reason, and they're essential parts of that healthcare process. Right? So they're going to be key participants on, like, the steering committees, your task forces, redesign initiatives, and things of that nature. Clinical leadership and medical staff leadership. Your clinical and medical staff that make up your healthcare organization, they're necessary to provide those care processes provided by the organization. Especially significant is your medical staff leadership. They reach the majority of your physicians providing care in their organization. Also essential is the need to reach each and every physician who treats those patients in that clinical setting. So EHR project teams must avoid only working through medical staff leadership. The project team may always infiltrate the ranks of the total medical staff through communications, orientation, engagement in your EHR projects. Other things important in terms of leadership is that quality and safety. You have quality and safety officers. They are key players in the design and implementation of new computer systems, especially in your clinical areas. They are responsible for measuring and ensuring quality of care taking place by the definition of your data elements, and this is what your HIS systems run on. So making sure those data elements are built into that new system. You change management leadership. This concept determines the ability of your healthcare workers and organizations to successfully meet the goals for that organization and to successfully adapt to the forces in their environment. So change management is very important because there's all these evolutionary things are occurring. We need people to respond and react appropriately, and so we have to have someone to be concerned with change management. This concludes our presentation for systems and management.